Oh, yeah, thanks.
Lauren Shizik, CHAP staff.
Ann Powell, Commissioner representing Greater Baltimore Committee.
Nicole Battle, Commissioner representing Affordable Housing Developers.
Peter Morrill, Commissioner.
Catherine Good, Commissioner.
Kapow Lynn, Commissioner.
Sarah Langmead, Commissioner.
Garrett Power, Commissioner.
CHAP staff?
Eddie Leon, CHAP staff.
Tyreek Charlouse, CHAP staff.
Caitlin Audette, CHAP staff.
Thank you all. Before we begin, there's something that I'd like to do. As you all know, we are blessed today to have Lauren with us to help us guide us through the commission. But as you all may know or may not know, our leader, Eric Holcomb, lost his father. And out of respect for Eric, I asked him, I said, Eric, you mind sharing a bio of your dad? And since this commission is so engaged in preserving history and talking about history and speaking history, how fitting it is for us to indulge in the beautiful life of Mr. William Franklin Holcomb, born on 12/14/1935. William Franklin Holcomb was born in Warren, Ohio, to Electra Whitson Holcomb and Herbert Young Holcomb. Bill lived in Warren, Ohio until the age of 9 when he moved to Phoenix, Arizona in 1945. In 1954, he graduated high school and entered New Mexico State University to study engineering. In 1955, during his sophomore year at college, his father passed away and he returned to Phoenix. He then took classes at Arizona State University and then spent a year in Hawaii. In 1956, on a blind date, he met Virginia Mary Humphrey. And on June 4th, 1959, they got married in Riverside, California. After their marriage, they spent a year at New Mexico State University. And then after graduating with a chemical nuclear engineering degree, they moved to Idaho Falls, Idaho, where he worked for Argonne National Laboratory nuclear power plant on the first breeder reactor in the world, which was designated a national landmark in 1966. In 1963, Craig Holcomb was born, and in 1966, Eric Holcomb was born. In 1973, the family moved to Washington, D.C. area, where Bill became a commissioned officer in the United States Public Health Service and worked at the Environmental Protection Agency, where he helped establish the agency. In the 1980s, he became the Radiation Safety Officer for the National Institute of Health. In 2000, he retired from service and devoted his life to his family, being a loving father and grandfather for 3 grandchildren. On May 9, 2024, he passed on. He is survived by his 2 sons, Craig and Eric Holcomb, 2 daughters-in-law, Tracy and Karen Holcomb, and 3 grandchildren, Elliot, Emerson, and Kelly Holcomb. What a beautiful life. It was an honor to read this. Eric, God bless you and your family, and God bless your father's soul. And thank you all for listening. Finally, want to give a huge thank you to one of our commissioners, Nicole Battle. Nicole, thank you. A round of applause. And the rest of the commission, through the last 4 months of the commission, your leadership has been outstanding. I want to say thank you publicly. Let's get on to it. The mission of CHAP is to enhance and promote the culture and economy of Baltimore through the preservation of building structures, sites, and neighborhoods that have aesthetic, historic, and architectural value. The goals of CHAP include preserving historic architecture and monuments, reclaiming broken neighborhoods, preventing demolition by neglect, and integrating our city's past into its future. We have a few housekeeping items, and a lot of you are very familiar with this, so it's really simple. This is the gavel, okay? If you all have any conversation amongst each other, we ask that you take it outside. If you have your phone on you, which most people do, put it on vibrate, okay? If you did not sign up for outside with the agenda to publicly speak, please feel free to do so. When your name is called to come and speak, we give people 3 minutes, right? But what ends up happening is when I see this gavel here, that means literally you have 30 seconds left. And we're very gracious, but we ask that you do not go over the 30 minutes. Thank you. I would like to make a motion to waive the reading of the minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any corrections or additions that need to be made to the minutes? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. Due process. CHAP reviews applications in conjunction with the building permit process of the permit section of the Department of Housing and Community Development. If a building permit application is filed prior to historic design review, the application is placed on hold pending completion of the CHAP review process. The review process is completed by issuing an authorization to proceed. The historic design review process is in addition to other applicable laws and regulations and does not diminish the force of urban renewal plans, building codes, zoning codes, etc. It is the applicant's responsibility to comply with all applicable laws, regulations, and codes. Proposed projects are reviewed prior to issuing a building permit. Applicants must comply with the Baltimore City Historic Preservation Design Guides in planning and executing their projects. Design review considers the proposed work, taking into consideration the historic and architectural character of the structure and of the immediate area. Applicants will need to clearly explain how their project complies with the design guidelines. Minor projects. In order to expedite the application process, the Commission has delegated review authority to the Executive Director for cases involving minor projects. Minor projects must not significantly change the overall appearance or remove the significant, undamaged historic fabric. Major projects. Major projects may change the overall character, appearance, and integrity of the structure. Substantial building alterations, demolitions, additions, and new constructions are considered major projects and are reviewed at a public hearing. Interested parties should request a pre-development meeting in the planning department to begin the review process. An electronic version of all materials must be submitted to the CHAP staff at least 25 calendar days prior to the public hearing date. If the application is complete, the project shall be scheduled for a public hearing. CHAP hearings. At the public hearing, CHAP staff presents recommendations to the Commission regarding the project. Following staff presentation, the applicant may make a presentation to the Commission. Interested parties includes neighborhood associations, have the opportunity to provide public testimony. Following testimony, the Commission renders a decision on the application at the public hearing. Persons aggrieved by the decision of the Commission may seek judicial and appellate review in accordance with the Baltimore City Code. After an authorization to proceed is issued, the applicant may obtain a building permit. The Commission's process is impartial, and staff comments are evidence that assist the Commission in rendering decisions. I would like to ask for a motion to approve the final agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let us begin. We have a consent agenda, 1507 Bank Street, Falls Point Historic District. And the request is to construct two-story rear addition. And what I would like to ask, do I have a waiver of the consent agenda?
Move to approve consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do I have a second?
Yes.
That's good. Thank you, Peter. Oh,
Sorry.
it's okay. Do I have all in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. First on our agenda, 114 through 116 West Lexington Street and 207 Park Avenue, 5 and Dime Historic District. Request concept review, 7-story new construction and facade of rehabilitation. Application, Chucks Okoro. Please forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong. Correct me when you get up. And the staff is Ms. Caitlin.
Do you need to put on the record that Commissioner Powell has recused herself for this item?
The answer is yes. Catherine, thank you. Commissioner Powell has recused herself from this portion of the agenda for 114 through 116 Lexington Street and 207 Park. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I have today to present to you the project at 120 West Lexington, but it's still these three separate properties before it gets consolidated. So the property is within the 5 and Dime Local Historic District. It's if you can't hear me, that's good. You all know this is, we've been seeing it a lot lately. So this is at the corner of Lexington and Park at the northern portion of the historic district. So as stated, the buildings are located at the corner of Park and West Lexington Street. The rear of the buildings are not visible as the back wall of what was previously here now fronts towards Clay Street, where our new construction kind of hides everything. And here's some views so we can kind of be aware of what we're talking about. So 207 Park Avenue is at the north end of the site, and you can see the new construction, newish construction, adjacent to it that fronts Clay Street. 116 West Lexington, which was reviewed previously and approved for demolition. And then 114 West Lexington Street. So there's a lengthy background here. We're not going to go through all of it, but just to note that this did come to you all twice last year for demolition hearings. At the demolition hearing 1, the commission found that the buildings were historic and contributing to the local historic district. And at the demolition hearing 2, the commission approved the demolition of the corner building, requesting that it be documented prior to its demolition, and disapproved the demolition of the 2 smaller structures. So that kind of sets the stage for where we are today. So the applicant proposes to consolidate the 3 properties, complete new infill construction on the site where demolition was approved, connect the new construction to the interior of the 2 historic buildings, and continue the new construction above the adjacent properties. The facades of 114 West Lexington and 207 Park would be retained and rehabilitated. So I'm going to go through each of the portion of the design guidelines that's relevant, and then discuss how it does or does not meet those. So the first section of guidelines is 1.17, alterations and additions, where we review how alterations and additions can be compatible with the historic character. So the proposed new construction addition generally meets this guideline. The applicant intends to retain and repair the historic front elevations. The new construction will be contemporary in style. However, the floor-to-floor height, regular window rhythm, and the continuation of the storefront along the ground floor make it compatible with the adjacent architecture. The setbacks will allow the additions to feel like part of the general urban setting, and there's a clear hierarchy where the historic portions of the buildings remain important within the viewshed. Next up is guiding principles for new design, where it's again identifying character-defining features of the surrounding buildings and streetscape, and designing new buildings to be visually compatible. So a lot of these have overlap, so I'm sorry if it appears that I'm being repetitive. So the proposed addition generally meets this guideline. The applicant intends to retain and repair the historic elevations. The new construction will be taller than the buildings immediately adjacent to it, but the area has a unique compilation of building typologies with a wide variety of building heights within the immediate vicinity, as shown here on the drawing provided by the architect. Let's see. And site design, so primary buildings should have a similar orientation. New construction at corners should have special consideration for design of entrances. So this proposal meets these guidelines. The new construction is oriented to the street with a storefront along West Lexington that wraps the corner and continues along Park Avenue. Both historic buildings will retain their historic entrances as well. So there is, this meets the guideline completely. And scale and form. So the proposed new construction generally meets this guideline. Well, the new construction is taller than the buildings immediately surrounding it. As stated previously, the wide variety here shows that it is appropriate for the area in scale and form. And you can see in this diagram how with the change in material proposed at above the 5th floor, they're trying to relate this to some of the smaller scale buildings found in the vicinity. And then building entrances. So design building entrances to enhance the connection. So again, the proposal generally meets its guidelines through the use of this continuous storefront. And staff has some minor recommendations that we'll offer as conditions here to enhance how this meets the guideline. For neighborhood comments, the Market Center CDC, Baltimore Heritage, Baltimore Development Corporation, and Downtown Partnership of Baltimore were informed of the proposal. Staff has received a letter of approval or a letter of support from the Market Center CDC, who operate the Architectural Review Committee, and I believe Baltimore Heritage is here today. So the proposed new construction and addition largely meet the relevant guidelines through the retention of the historic facades, the compatible design of the new construction, the activation of the street level, and the connection to the adjacent architecture through floor-to-floor heights and storefront continuity. And staff recommends a concept approval for the proposal with the following conditions: that they modify the ground floor design to provide a clear hierarchy of uses. At the moment, the difference between entrances to residential versus commercial is not quite clear. Consider alterations to protruding balconies, which seem a little awkward in their current design. Provide east and north elevations, and provide additional articulation at the base of the new building to help break up the elevation, and this could be through a reveal or string course or another element above the storefront. Any questions?
What is the intent of the recommendation to alter the protruding balconies?
It's more just to investigate it. So as they're designed, they're located kind of where there are gaps between the new construction and the historic elevation, and they only begin above the elevation of the smaller scale building. Yeah, on the south side. And they, just to be honest, it feels a little awkward in their specific location and how they connect the relationship to the building that is, the portion of the building mass that goes to the property line. Yeah, so it was just, how did those, I think once we get an east elevation, that'll help too, just getting a better understanding of how that interacts at the corner, and, you know, what it feels like to be under them, in that kind of that space in between. So not like a hard and fast, like you must do this, but more of a look into this a little bit. Might need some massaging.
So the concern is how it would feel to be underneath them?
Yeah, and how close they are to the adjacent mass, and if that,
Kind of in the shadow in the corner there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I do have one question. Yes, sir. I get, this is for concept
Yes.
approval, is that correct? So majority of it is looking at the massing and scale
Yep.
of the building, and that there will be another, the intent is to have another submission that will maybe start to look at all that.
yeah, request
plus
that this should return
articulation.
to full commission for, I didn't state that here, but yes, I would like it to return to full commission for
Okay.
final details.
Understood, thank you.
Okay, then, so is this what, round one or this is round two?
This is round one. This is
round
concept
one?
review. So we have
Round
not,
one,
you've
okay.
not seen anything to do with the new construction proposed here. This is the first time.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Can you refresh my memory just to make sure I'm remembering right? I was looking at your bullets. For the two historic structures that we denied demolition, that was for the whole building, correct? It wasn't just a facade.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Caitlin? Caitlin, thank you. On our list, we have Mr. Adam. Would you like to come up and speak? Anything you'd like to share?
I'm not speaking about this project.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, let me go back to my screen.
Do we have?
This is all I have on the list here. It's all good. Come on up. For the record, whole name. Good.
Okay. Thank you. I think I'm 0 for 2 in signing up in the right paper for the last two CHAP hearings. So my name is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and I'm here to support the current proposal. We have not supported the current thoughts for this location, so this is a change from our prior positions. And I thought maybe just in 1 minute, we did get the opportunity to meet with a representative from the development team last night, our board of directors. That's how we make our decisions. And I thought it might be most helpful if I just shared about 3 or 4 comments that came from the discussion that our Baltimore Heritage Board of Directors had in reviewing what you all just saw as well. Let me just read these out. The rhythm is thoughtful and respects the historic buildings. There are appropriate setbacks, and the setbacks distinguish themselves as revealing not just the front facades, but actually parts of the side elevations as well. The horizontal lines that go run the entire length of the block, particularly on Park Avenue, help tie the entire block together, giving the new building and the historic building a sense of place. And applaud breaking up of the massing of the new buildings so that although it is a new building, it still retains some flavor of the smaller scale historic district. And finally, that the height is high, but not overpowering. That's it for me.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. For the sake of conversation, did we miss anybody that wanted to speak? Okay, good. So,
So the architect is here if you all.
that's fine. Come on up. Like I said, if it's not on the sheet, like I wouldn't know, so come on.
I didn't do my homework.
It's okay.
Green is go. Okay, green is go. I'm just here to address any questions. I believe it was, my name is Tamer Ezat. It's actually Ezat, not Ezrat, which was up there, which is the most unfortunate misspelling I've gotten to date. No, I'll just rip you on it later. I appreciate you guys having us. This project is relatively ambitious for what has been, I guess, seen before or relative to the immediate scale, but I'm just here to address any comments related to concept and massing. Of course, there's a lot of, unfortunately, with technology and everything that we can develop quickly, what ends up happening in concept and massing is sometimes we produce too much information that can open up questions for a lot of things. But what we really wanted to focus on is the deliberate thought and process for what we were doing and why some of the horizontal banding and scale massing breakdown and was really intentional. And so that's where we're at right now. And a lot of the comments that I think staff has provided is something that we're already internally studying right now. But as you know, there's a certain pencils down moment, and that's where we hit that time frame. So I'm here to address any direct comments related to those things or anything that can help dissuade any worries you may have.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Good.
Can you talk a little bit about how you arrived at the 7-story goal? I assume there's a certain number of units count you're trying to meet, or how did you arrive at the 7 stories?
It's a combination of density relative to what the investment of the development was going to take. So there was a kind of a threshold of unit count that the developer was aiming towards, right? So I think, number one, what that kind of pushed us towards is studying type of construction, right? So we wanted to stay with wood at some level from a scale of efficiency in this construction type. Anything taller, we would have been pushed in the concrete. So it was really how do we get the most density that we can while being respectful to the context around. So we arrived, I think it was a plus 40 unit kind of goal for this project for the intensity of investment it was going to take. So if we did something smaller, it just wouldn't have worked for what the project mandate was for us as what our client had directed us to study. So that's kind of what pushed us to where we're at. So it's an economic answer is the short answer.
Okay. My next question, actually, Lauren, I'm going to ask you a question first. Because we review the exterior of buildings, and in this case, we voted to retain the 2 historic buildings, and now the exteriors of those are being kind of wrapped into this larger building. Is it still under our purview to talk about how kind of the areas of those buildings are getting incorporated into this mass? Because it's like an exterior, but then now it's not an exterior. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. That essentially, yeah, there's going to be a preservation of the sort of front portions of the building, but not of the rest of them. Is that?
Well, and that was where my question was going to get to, but I just wasn't sure kind of where. That's a weird kind of gray area for us because the building's there, but it's getting incorporated to a new building. So is it there?
I mean, there is going to be some selective demolition of the existing buildings. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So I guess that's my question, which is for the 2 historic buildings, is the intention that a majority of the building is going to be demolished and just the front piece that you can see from the elevation is being kept, or are those buildings being incorporated into the new building itself?
The intent is that the shell structures, not just the facades, the actual bearing walls that exist on both sides are being maintained, and we are bridging to them and I don't know how to say, attaching to them in some way. And what really drove this project is how to make those floor levels work, and which they don't, but we're going to figure out how to make it work.
Okay.
So Park is about 6 feet higher, or more north than what is Lexington. So making those floor levels all play nicely together has been a little bit fun. So we're working on that, but graphically what isn't, so you can tell if you're looking at the floor plans, Lexington, you can see the two dark north-south strips, if you will, of wall that is representing existing walls to remain. So that's one piece I would point to.
16 of the concept plans.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioner. So yes, that is those two walls, and then the other walls on Park are supposed to be remaining. It was just a graphic non-clarity that I didn't show there, but those would be remaining as well. So getting those floor levels to work, we're trying to work and basically graft onto these. It's no intention of the project or the developer to just bulldoze the back of what you see from a facade-ectomy, if you will. We're really trying to graft onto them and work off of those.
Okay, that was one of my main concerns, seeing the proposed elevation, is that you really only see just a small portion of the historic buildings and whether we would be losing the rest of the resource or not. And then I think those are all my questions. Thank you.
Does any other commissioners have any other questions they'd like to ask?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
It's not particularly a question. But I definitely see the moves that you're making to incorporate banding into the facade and some sort of variation as you go up to acknowledge different alignments with different pieces of the neighborhood. But I would just suggest that you take I can't find the 3D thing again, but I think that what, as currently proposed, the integration of the existing buildings into the new design could be stronger. So I would just encourage you to take a look again about how you can make them, I mean, obviously this is a diagram that is intended to distinguish things from one another. So as you keep developing the design, look at how it can be integrated
I do agree.
more thoroughly.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
A big part of
Oh,
that,
sorry.
one last thing.
Go
Big
ahead.
part of that, I mean, I see that the distinction in the vertical facades is at above the 5th floor level. And that's something that you might want to take a look at, having at different levels or whatever. I realize that you're trying to turn the corner and meet or resolve two different things that aren't off, but that's something to take a look at. Anyway, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Terry, can you take us back to our recommendation page? Thank you, sir. Okay, commissioners, do you want to have any conversations amongst yourselves before we, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I had a question, because we're looking at concept and just the actual buildings and not really looking at details. Should number 2 still be included?
It is part of the massing in a sense because you're protruding out from the building. That's how I thought about it.
Caitlin, go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I also think of these kind of conditions as kind of advice as they continue with the design and continue moving forward. And I appreciate all of the feedback that the commission provides because it makes the next stage that much easier. So I would say any, additional recommendations or anything like that that can guide the team as they continue with the project is for the best.
Are you done, Commissioner Nicole? Okay, I wanted to make sure I didn't interrupt. All right, so I wanted to build on what, I can never remember everyone's last name, wanted to be all formal. So I wanted to build on that. First, I do applaud the design team and the intentional thoughtfulness about breaking up the facade. From my perspective, coming into neighborhoods with large monolith buildings is not generally the best design approach. So I do thank you for being thoughtful of that. But as Sarah was saying, I do think that it could be taken a step farther and, think about how to even more make it read at somewhat of a smaller scale. I think that's particularly helpful when you're looking at how they kind of place the massing in the couple broader neighborhood views, and you really start to see some of the smaller scale buildings. So while you move kind of out a block and you have a lot of larger buildings, really that immediate vicinity has a lot of smaller structures. And so if that can be thought about and kind of, taken a step further about how that massing can kind of be broken up into a scale that just helps kind of incorporate the smaller buildings, especially the two historic buildings on the side. I'm not saying just take their line and carry it all across. That's not what I'm saying, but just to respect the scale of the immediately surrounding block a little bit more would make me more comfortable with the extra height of the 7 stories, because while that seems to fit in the larger neighborhood, right here, it seems a little tall to me with the difference, especially going over the 2 historic buildings. So my other comment would be, I don't know if there's a way, because trying to meet unit counts I know is always a hard process, but if there's a way to try to give those 2 historic structures a little more breathing room or indication around the side or the roof area or something like that. Because right now it just kind of appears like the building's kind of swallowing them. And that would be the other thing. I don't know if there's something you can do massing wise with that I would recommend looking at. I don't think that's something we need to really put in the conditions, but I think it would help make the design stronger.
Commissioner Good, thank you. Lauren, to Commissioner Good's point, I know this is just the concept review. How can we just incorporate, if for the next round, just those thoughts, or if there's a way to just place that? I mean, you don't have to put in a recommendation, but is there something on the staff level that you all can do when we hear recommendations such as that?
Yeah, I mean, so the architect is here, I am here. We'll have another meeting in the future, and we'll just take these comments into consideration as we have it. And so I think what we can do is, at the next meeting, talk about, how those comments were responded to.
Understood. Okay, great. Okay, cool.
Right, and I also want to respect the fact that this is a massing and scale conversation. So, I want to make sure our recommendations are held to that.
No, thank you. But you made a good point. When you start talking about the height, it made my mind turn. So thank you. Peter.
I was just gonna say, overall, I think the building looks good. I like the height, and the massing is fine with me. I agree with staff comments on the articulation of the storefront. I mean, it's kind of bland there, so with some sort of awning or belt course, I think will really help it out. As to the balconies, I'm almost wondering if you want to just kind of lean into balcony and do more balcony, or maybe you do recessed balcony to kind of echo what's going on the west facade. So I agree, taking a second look at that is good. I'm not immediately opposed to them. But no, overall, I think I'm in agreement with staff's recommendations.
Okay. So if there aren't any more, I'm sorry, okay, Powell, go right ahead.
Just a few comments, and then maybe they're partially recommendations for maybe the next round. But I too, I think the massing, I think they've done a good job, in my opinion, to work around or to incorporate, but also to establish a proper massing on the corner of that block. And I personally don't have a problem with the height of the building. I think that in fact, in my opinion, I think the massing and scale proportion, I think, is fine, and I think I would recommend approval here today for this first round. In terms of going a little bit deeper into the articulation, as just things to think about for next time. I think that as a new construction building, that there's something to be said about it being a corner building, and that has sort of the license to be prominent, and particularly it's a new building, and looking at it, saying that while it's a new building, but it's also next to historic structures, that you want to try to be elegant with that new building, and maybe sometimes less is more, in my opinion. So, I would almost argue that the brick building can be just a brick building, and I don't necessarily think you need to switch materials for 2 levels on top, making it look like it was an addition later on down the road, or unless there's a specific programmatic change that feels like those 2 levels are penthouses or something else, that I can argue that requires maybe a fenestration change or material change. But in this case, if it's units all the way up, I would say try to tackle and build and design and build an elegant brick building. We have very tall brick buildings in the city, and we can have contemporary ones just the same. So I think I would say look for consolidation and simplification there. I mean, right now, if you look at it, there's a lot of different fenestration types already, but I'm assuming that's the next level, next step, and that there'll be some iterations and development there. So I think that can improve and get better. And just a couple of notes about what was recommended. I too agree about the base of the storefront condition. I would say Commissioner Morrow's suggestions are on point, but I also think programmatically and at a facade level of storefront is also something to consider, because you have an opening that's on one side, then an opening on the other side, then you have just like flat, sort of static facade, and that could be more. I would challenge them to think about more operability or more porosity there, that it's not just a solid wall there of storefront. So think about the urban fabric at that point. And then again, this is just articulation coming down the road. I think it's already been said about balconies. I'm sure there's going to be some evolution there. But think also in elevation. I think that some of the windows are not quite lining up to the base elevation of the storefront on the ground level. So just think about those kinds of things to clean up. But all in all, I think they've done a good job getting a great start on this project, and it's going in the right direction in my opinion. So I'll recommend approval.
Okay, Powell, thank you, sir.
One note, I just wanted to ask for clarification on your comment. So from your opinion and perspective, letting the building kind of be a material, because programmatically it's all the same, how would you recommend, or maybe you don't feel that it's necessary to try to kind of relate to the scale of the other buildings? You're saying just let it be a prominent corner building? Is that what you're saying?
That's my opinion. I don't think it needs to change materialities there. I think you can build a brick building, a true brick volume. The scale, the height is the same. It's not going to change. I would say, like, again, if there was like a setback and there's like going to be balconies on that level, it's a 3-dimensional sort of a condition that forces a material change, and I could see that. But that's what's happening with all the massing that's set back. You have a material change that makes sense because you're trying to distinguish the old versus the new, and you're pushing back, and that's why it's allowing them to provide balcony. Here in this case, you're sharing the same facade elevation. It just doesn't make sense to me. I feel like it doesn't want to. It's a new building. It doesn't want to try to look like it's an addition on top of, But that's I'm one person of the commission.
No, that's okay. I wanted to ask, so we have a little bit of a difference of opinion, which is fine. We're individual people.
Thank you all. Great conversation. You all see the recommendations on the screen. Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendations for 114, 116 West Lexington Street, and 207 Park Avenue for concept review?
I'd like to propose an alternate
Okay,
motion.
okay.
The motion being everything that the staff has recommended, with an additional condition that they consider how to more strongly integrate the existing facades into the design of the new pieces.
Okay. So that'll be our number 5. We have that.
I'll second that motion.
Laura, she's just writing it down. I'm actually, and then she'll speak it.
Sorry, could you just?
Would you like me to restate that?
I would love for you to restate
Absolutely.
that. Thank you.
Consider how to more strongly integrate the existing facades to remain into the new portions. To the new design.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to, repeat for the record. Move staff recommendation with additional directive to figure out how to more strongly integrate the existing facades into the design of the new building.
Yes, so that would be number 5.
Yep.
That's number 5. Tyreek, you about to say something?
Is there an intention for this to come back to the full commission or be a staff review?
Come back.
Full commission.
Full commission.
That was a mid from the staff recommendation.
Okay, and I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, so back to the commission. Do I have a second? Okay. Do I have all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstain? We do have one, of course. The ayes have it.
And shall we?
Yes, retrieve, please. Ann, thank you. Thank you, commissioners. Next on our agenda is 507 South Ann Street, Fells Point Historic District. Request 1-story vertical addition and 3-story rear addition. The applicant is Edith Paula, and the staff is Mr. Eddie.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, we have for our next review, as stated, 507 South Ann Street in the Fells Point Historic District. Adam Carballo is the architect. The owner is Edith Pula. They're requesting a 3-story rear addition to an existing house with a 1-story addition on the rooftop. The property is located here in central north section of the Fells Point Historic District. Is the building that is indicated by the arrow. Is the property is a 2-story late Italianate and row building clad in formstone, located in the Fells Point Historic District. It has 2.5 foot wide breezeway separating this property from the building to the south. The property has no rear public right-of-way or access. The row houses located immediately to the south of this one was built in an earlier period, in different style than this house. Those particular ones are built with gabled roofs and dormers. Here we have a view of the house in question. You see the gap space that from when it was built along the side there on the south end. The bottom storefront area has been muddled about many times, so the architect is proposing redoing the entry and windows that meet the guidelines. Those are not in question here, and the front facade will be proportionally and corrected with the removal of the formstone. As we see here, this is a view going down Eastern Avenue. The addition will be on the slightly visible around where the peak of the southern building is there next to it. But most of it will be concealed on the site. The property, as shown here, is landlocked and not visible from the public right-of-way in any direction. There's no rear access and no walking alley either. Applicant proposes to construct a 3-story frame addition to the rear of the property, with a 1-story vertical addition on the roof of an existing building. The building will be widened to infill the south elevation, creating a sally port entry appearance. The infill will be set back from the facade. The top addition will also be set back as to not be readily visible from the public right-of-way. The rear addition will have no fenestration, either the north or south elevations. All fenestration primarily be on the east rear elevation and on 3rd-story front elevation, west facade. The 3rd-story addition will feature a large glazed storefront system with fully glazed door and large picture windows and transoms. The door will access the roof deck and will have which is approximately 6.5 feet deep. A railing system will be composed of glass railing atop of the parapet, downspout located on the front facade. The facade of the addition will be clad in a cementitious hardy plank panel, and the rear and side elevations will be clad in smooth finish hardy board siding. The addition will have composite trim. Staff applied Chapter 1.17 alterations and additions of the Baltimore City Preservation Design Guidelines. The addition will not affect any historic character defining features. The facade will be rehabilitated. Rear portion of the addition is compatible with the building and is similar to other contemporary rear additions found in this part of the historic district. Height, massing scale, and match that of the existing buildings. Roof atop addition will be set back from the facade of the building by 10 feet and will not be readily visible from public right of way. One aspect of the proposal that does not fully meet the guidelines is the height of the third floor rooftop addition. I have spoken to the architect and we can work this part out. It has a large parapet on the front elevation, which gives it a taller appearance. This is the plan as viewed with the of the site, the left being the principal South Ann Street and the rear landlocked in over an existing rear addition that was proposed for removal a few years ago. The front elevation has before and after. The current roof addition is just slightly above the adjacent ridge line of the southern structures. This is the rear elevation looking back. None of this is visible from the public right of way. We have a cut through showing the setback of the rooftop elevation, showing the rooftop elevation and the railing system and the high parapet edge. These are some views, perspective views, showing how the addition will look on the site and from street level. The FDRC has reviewed the project and has given its preliminary support for the project. They do wish to see some more additional details at a future meeting. Staff recommends concept approval of the reduction in the height of the rooftop addition with the project to return to staff for final review. Thank you.
Eddie, thank you. Any questions for Eddie?
Get a drink, Harry. I just wanted to clarify that the area where the Sally Port is that they're proposing to put the building over, that is all on the property. There's no public right of way.
That's not really, it was not really a Sally Port that was shared. It was the property was never built to the full extent of the property line.
Okay. And then did you have any comments or were comments solicited from the two adjacent neighbors?
We have not heard anything from any adjacent neighbors concerning the project.
Oh.
Ms. Pula owns actually one of the properties.
Okay. Are you signed up
Hold on one
to
second.
testify? Okay.
Well, remember, next time you have to only speak when you're called on. So I'll make sure you get
She
up.
was
I got you.
answering my
I got you.
question.
It's okay.
Ms. Pula owns other buildings adjacent to this.
Okay. That's it for my questions for Eddie.
Any other questions for Eddie? Okay, Eddie, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pula, come on up.
State your name for the record.
My name is Edith Pula, and I own 507. I bought it over 6 years ago. So I have been trying to get this project going. Lots of things intervened, COVID, among other things. My lawyer died, my husband died. I feel like I'm going to die before I get this done. So I certainly am anxious to get it going, and I think the neighborhood is too, because if you look at it, that building is really an eyesore. The double row house that you see at 503, 505, my grandparents built that. My mother was born in it. My grandparents died in it. I'll probably die in it. But I bought the house when it came available because it's causing me damage on the 505 side. I've got delaminated plaster, et cetera, et cetera. So I bought it thinking, great, I'll fix it up. It'll stop harming my primary residence there. And over 6 years later, we're still going at it. So as the most adjacent neighbor, certainly, I do think that this would be an incredible improvement for sure. And I mean, the form stones pulling away from the brick, I had to get there were 2 additions made, goodness knows how long, that I got approval several years ago to demolish because they were falling in on themselves and causing potential damage to me and our backyard. So I'm hoping that we can really get going on this. We've been through many iterations of this before we got to this point. I'm anxious as a member of Fells Point to get this done, and I'm certainly anxious as it being my property to get it done. So we're here to answer any questions you have about it. Adam has been Carballo's been working on this for quite some time. In the course of trying to get this done, I have seen so many projects in my neighborhood, big ones, get thought of, done, finished, and now they're years old. And here I still am with my tiny little decrepit row house trying to do something good. So I hope you all help me with that. And any questions? I grew up in this house. Et cetera. So I know it, or the house next to it rather. So I know the neighborhood very, very well.
Have you talked to your neighbors on the other side at 509?
509 is also, that was recently redone, and Mr. Carballo also did that. So I have been talking with the owner. It's now being rented. She moved out and is renting it. So yes, we have been in many, many discussions over many years. And when she was redoing her house, of course, I had to give her people access to everything because you can't get into anything except from Ann Street. So yes, to answer that. And on the other side, 501, that's my cousin, and he'll listen to what I say anyway. Long history in the neighborhood for sure.
Well, Ms.
Well,
Paula, thank you. And,
I love to hear from long-term residents, so I love to hear from long-term residents. I applaud your efforts to save yet another structure there.
Thank you.
It is a beautiful home. It's not a small home, it's a beautiful home. Hold on, before you leave, are there any other questions for Ms. Paula? Ms. Paula, thank you.
Okay.
Adam, it's your time. Come on. And just give us your full name.
Thank you. Adam Carballo. As Ms. Pula mentioned, I've been working with her for quite some time. We went through a number of iterations. We've also worked very closely with both Eddie and also the Fells Point Design Review Committee. We've met with them over the course of, I guess, several years, really, making some adjustments as the project scope has developed over time. As Ms. Pula mentioned, our goals with this property is to enhance and bring it back to life. There's even going back to the Sanborn maps, there was a storefront on this property for, sort of generations. Ms. Pula remembers when she was a child an actual store being in that ground floor, and our goal is to return it back to sort of what it may have been initially on the ground floor. As Eddie mentioned, there is it's technically a semi-detached house. The goal is to widen the house as we set it back from the front facade so it enjoys the full lot width of 16 feet. We're doing that on the upper floors and retaining the passage and access to the rear yard on the ground floor with a gate so that, water runoff and so forth can actually get, evacuate out to the street. The top floor, the third floor, our initial plans were to bring that sort of proud of the front side. If you can go back to that image that we had, the street view. Actually, no, the one that I was before he changed it. One more. There you go. We originally looked at ideas where we would almost create like a bookend concept about the 1930s building that Ms. Pula's grandfather or father reconstructed on the front facade to do sort of three taller three-story buildings. That was our initial concept. And obviously, kind of working through at FDRC and CHAP and Planning Department, we've sort of reduced that scale, set things back from the front facade. And our goal is to remove the formstone, restore the brick, create a more appropriate cornice, which, should have existed from the beginning. And then if we go to our axons. Some of the latest comments, and I think they're also in staff recommendation, is that we will be reducing the overall height of the parapet on the third floor portion, just to bring some of the height down. As far as like the actual, mullion placement and glass line, time and again, we've gotten a lot of feedback from the FDRC asking us to make this more modern on the top floor. And we've kind of worked with Ms. Pula, her desires versus, her aesthetic desires versus the desires of the FDRC aren't always in line, which, that happens. But I believe our next step is really to kind of, pin down on what exactly that glazing is on the top floor. And so I think there's some flexibility there. However, reestablishing the existing building, putting an appropriate cornice, putting an appropriate storefront, restoring the brick, all of those elements, as we are presenting here, I think we have pretty locked in, less any feedback I receive here.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Adam? Let me get Sarah first. Go ahead, Sarah.
In the design of the two lower stories of the facade, do you have any documentation of what those looked like before the formstone was put on? Or are you just using that this current design is based on, or are you just using the kind of language of the neighborhood?
Mostly just the language of the neighborhood. Unfortunately, I don't have any very good images. We have looked on MHT, looked through MHT. We've also looked through, other sort of public resources for, facade, historic photographs, and we really didn't see anything that was, that was helpful, that shared what that building might have looked like 80, 100 years ago, unfortunately. But we're trying to reuse language that exists elsewhere in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Catherine.
That was one of my questions, so you already answered that. Do you have the section in this presentation? The whole building Okay, so I'm gonna have to do this the fun way. I was just curious, I was trying to understand in this section, the existing building, I don't know if you can see my screen. The existing building, this is the rear wall, and so it kind of does that. Is that correct? And then this and this part is the addition?
Correct, yeah. The existing building, as Ms. Pula testified to earlier, went back quite a ways. This is a fairly deep lot, and portions of that building had been removed and raised already. The footprint is really going back to where the original footprint was. You can kind of see where this building, even in this image, goes back to where, her adjoining property goes back on, was it 505, I guess? And it did go back further than that. There is evidence of,
Presumably it's stopped for the excavation.
No, I was just
Yeah,
asking.
it's been raised. I mean, part of that, a lot of it's been raised.
I was just trying to understand when I was looking at the.
Oh, I told her she can come up.
This is
We need her to be mic'd.
503.
Oh,
Here,
Paula. Paula.
Here, hold my.
Miss Paula,
hold
you
my
need
mic
mine.
up.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. So this is 503, original footprint, then additions here and an addition here. 507 went back to, let's see, here. And then those were the two literally falling into themselves additions from goodness knows when that I had to get demolished just for safety purposes.
Okay.
So the original footprint of the building goes to about here, and then there had been additions back to here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That's it.
And obviously with our reconstruction, because those raised additions are no longer there, we're basically complying with zoning for setbacks. This is C1. We could, in theory, go 100% lot with 0 foot rear yard setback. We're actually holding back, so she has a yard that she shares between the properties. So.
Okay, Adam, thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions for Adam? Adam, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyreek. Before we vote, is there any conversation amongst the commissioners that you'd like to have before we make a vote or recommendation?
I just have one question for staff, just because I don't remember. Does the commission have kind of an official position on removing formstone and putting back to brick? I mean, what I'm hearing from the applicant in this case is the formstone's already pulling away and there are those issues, but I just couldn't remember if there was kind of an official position.
Yes, our design guidelines do say that formstone can be removed, when it's in poor condition, which is, it's failing. It needs to be removed.
All right,
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure too, Eddie, there weren't any photos or anything, or information specifically about that, but we have heard it in the testimony on the record.
I've seen it in person.
You've seen it, okay.
Tyreek, go ahead, Tyreek.
I've approved a permit in Upton's Marble Hill, which allowed for the removal of the formstone so you could explore what was underneath. So then a decision was later made.
And Terry, the form stone, that's of course that thin gray stone that we always see in the city.
Yes, to protect the bricks.
To protect the bricks, that's right. Sarah, you had a question?
Well, my one kind of point of conversation for the commission is, and I don't really know how to come down on this one myself, but I'm just looking at the facade design. If you could go back to that, please, Eddie, thank you. And wondering if we're creating a false sense of history with how historic the bottom 2 floors look, considering how little is left. So I just wanted to bring that up. Because it looks like, the building looks like that because the original building looked like that. Like, that's the impression that I would get if I walked down the street and saw it. So, but then again, there's no problem that it isn't compatible with the neighborhood, because it certainly is.
Yeah, I get that. I think then, at the same time, then you would have to have I still think it wants a cornice. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's missing enough of traditional 19th century elements that I would look at that and say, yeah, that's a new storefront. You could maybe omit some of the faux panels on the mullions there, but I don't think it's going to trick anyone necessarily.
So commissioners, I do understand, because I was speaking about this with Eddie, because I had the same question. And staff's determination was that the facade piece of it was something that could be reviewed and approved at staff level. And, our guidelines do say, don't create a false sense of history when you're designing, designing a building or rehabilitation. And so, but it does say things can be sort of homages to the past, but there need to be subtle differences to differentiate old and new. And so staff's determination, Eddie's determination, was that, we could approve this. And certainly when we get to the details part, we'll look at that very closely. But the part that we felt needed the commission's review and approval was the addition, rear and vertical additions for this. But we do appreciate your comments, because we had the same discussion.
And this is a concept massing approval for us, so in the recommendation here is to return to staff for review, right?
Great. Any other points of conversation? All right. Go ahead, Nicole, go ahead, go
Yeah.
on.
Are there two windows or is it just one window? I mean, I see the design, it shows two, but then on there it shows one.
Which floor level are you looking at, Nicole?
So I'm looking at, so you were just showing the proposed design. I just wasn't sure which one is the right one. So right there, you
There's a
see
little bit
at
of a
the
difference
lower,
between them.
it shows it's
Oh, on
just
the
one
storefront.
window, yeah. And then in the drawings, page 8 of
Yeah,
the
it's got
drawings, it
mullion
shows.
between.
The 3D kind of model part shows two. I mean, that is a detail that can get worked out.
That's just a different, I think it's still one window opening. It's one opening, it just has a division.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Eddie, recommendation page? Do I have a motion for concept review for 507 South Ann Street with the recommendations set forth by the staff?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstain? The ayes have it. Thank you, Eddie. And finally, on our list, we have 1111 Hunter Street, Mount Vernon Historic District. The request, retroactive request for new window openings and painting brick. The applicant, forgive me if I do not pronounce your name, I'm going to just try to say the first name, Amon, and the staff will be Lauren.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am pinch hitting for Anthony today as he is out sick. So I am going to do my best, and if I don't know the answer, I will let you know. This property is located in the Mount Vernon Local Historic District, which encompasses roughly 40 blocks surrounding Mount Vernon Place. And the contributing buildings within the district include a diversity of styles and building types. The property is located on Hunter Street, which is an alley street between North Calvert Street and Guilford Avenue, as shown here. Here's some aerial views. It's very, very hard to see. The ground, street level photos will be better. This is a view from the south. This is a view from the east. And this building was originally constructed as a carriage house in the 1890s and underwent subsequent transformations, transitioning from a commercial use to its current status as a residence. The building is in a group of 5 two-story brick carriage houses on this block, which you can see here. It's the end of group, and it's 3 irregular bays wide. The side and rear of the building face onto unnamed one-lane alley street. So it's on a named alley street, and then with 2 unnamed smaller alley streets off of it. This row of carriage houses is characterized by decorative brick cornices and large arched openings or garage doors on the first floor that originally served horse-drawn carriages and later vehicles. Each carriage house also has a pedestrian door on the first floor facade, and the carriage houses mostly retain the paired loft doors on the second floor of the facades. However, that feature was infilled on this property sometime in the 20th century. The other 4 carriage houses have been painted, and this was the only unpainted carriage house of the group. Here's a view of the rear of the property in 2020, which shows the window openings of that time, and you can kind of see this terrible photo, but it's the best we've got, showing sort of the 3 sort of stepped window openings on that rear elevation that appear to have been at that time either boarded or infilled in some sort of way. The side and rear elevation have windows on the first and second floors. The majority of the windows on the property appear to be replacements, including the ones in the front, which are not subject of this discussion today. But some of the replacement windows also include recent replacements by the applicant. And there is evidence of previous window infill on the side elevation, again, by a previous owner. So this building has seen some changes. On January 24th, 2024, housing violations were issued for unauthorized alterations to the property's exterior. These violations include painting the exterior brick on the facade and side elevation, and installing windows and window openings without obtaining building permits or approval from CHAP, from the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. Because a stop work order was issued while the work was in progress, one of the new window openings was not completed. And on March 12, 2024, CHAP staff issued an authorization to proceed to temporarily stabilize the side elevation wall surrounding that unfinished punch window opening because bricks were falling off of the building. Here's the proposal. The applicant seeks retroactive approval for the following work completed without CHAP approval or building permits. Repointing and painting the unpainted brick and stone on the front and side elevation. The applicant used Benjamin Moore peel green exterior masonry paint and black paint for the window sills and the decorative cornice on the front. And then there's also a request to paint the rear elevation as well. The creation of 4 new punched window openings on the building, 2 on the side elevation, which I've circled, and 2 on the rear elevation. And installation of 4 new windows with thick metal framing on the side and rear elevations in those punched openings. And the window openings themselves are wrapped with metal. Additionally, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of going a little out of order, but other new windows include 3 transom windows installed in these window openings. And again, these transom windows have thick framing that fit into these extended window openings on the rear. So again, another aspect of this request is approval for the alteration of 2 window openings on the rear of the property to increase their length. So you can see the photo on the left shows sort of the original stepped sizes of the windows, and they've been lengthened to approximate the length of the first floor window, sort of to the farmost right. And as you can see, 2 first floor window openings were altered to increase the length to match the third window. However, no window sills were added at the bases of the extended window openings, and the window openings don't quite match the height of the third window. The sill of the historic window is respectively 1 and 2 courses of brick lower than the 2 altered window openings. And the final portion of the retroactive request is the request for approval of installation of salvaged historic windows and existing openings on the side and rear elevations. The applicant installed salvaged historic stained glass windows and historic casement windows on the side and rear elevations. The casement windows, which you can kind of see at an angle, they're the 4 smaller windows on the left first floor photo. The stained glass windows properly fit in the original openings, and 1 casement window on the side elevation properly fits in that historic opening as well. The 3 casement windows installed in the rear elevation are too short for the window openings, so the applicant installed the fixed transom windows above the operable casement windows. So application of guidelines. 1.2.4 brick. The installation of the 4 new window openings on the side and rear elevation resulted in damage to the brick that now comprises that window reveal. On 3 of the 4 windows, this has been covered up by the metal wrapping, which we'll discuss later in the window section. But the damage to the brick is still visible on the 1 window that was not completed prior to the stop work order being posted. In order to meet the CHAP guidelines, these broken and damaged bricks must be removed and replaced with salvage bricks that are compatible with the historic bricks in size, composition, and hardness, but do not need to match in color if the commission approves painting the masonry. 1.7 windows. The applicant, this states to, in most cases, do not alter the size, location, or shape of historic windows or window openings. The applicant did alter the size of 2 of the windows and did create new window openings. The alteration of the 2 window openings on the rear elevation lengthened the openings to be a similar side to the third adjacent window, and it doesn't fully meet this CHAP guideline. However, in this case, staff believes that this alteration can be retroactively approved because the windows are on a rear elevation. We regularly approve new window openings or open larger window openings on rear elevations, particularly in residences. However, the extended window openings are both shorter than the model window by a course or 2 of brick, and the lengthened windows do not have wood or masonry sills. They just appear to just sit on top of the exposed coursing. So staff recommends that this alteration be approved, provided that the window openings are altered to match the size of the third window and window sills are added. This guideline also states that in most cases do not create new window openings on primary elevations, and when required, locate new openings on a secondary elevation that cannot be seen from a public right-of-way. Design newly installed windows to be compatible with the historic windows and the overall character of the building. So the applicant did also create 4 new window openings, 2 on the side elevation, 2 on the rear elevation, and the guideline, does direct applicants to install new windows on a secondary elevation, which this work complies with. But the guidelines also direct that new windows should be compatible with the historic windows and the overall character of the building. And this is where, it sort of gets a little nuanced, that while the facade of the building has a formal fenestration pattern, the fenestration patterns on the side and the rear of the building really are purely functional, and they've been altered over time. There's a variety, right? That this was a carriage house. Like, windows were put in where they were needed, and they weren't where they weren't needed. Staff finds that while the new windows are contemporary and dimensionally different from the historic windows, staff finds that they're conceptually compatible as they continue this sort of functional pattern of fenestration on the side and rear elevations, adding windows where they are needed. However, the execution of the new window openings has resulted in damage to historic masonry, which necessitated wrapping the brick openings in black metal flashing, which does not comply with the guidelines that state don't wrap with metal or vinyl. Additionally, all the new windows, including the transom windows on the rear elevation, appear to be framed up by dimensional lumber that is wrapped, and this too does not meet the design guidelines. The windows must properly fit in the window openings without additional framing. So again, conceptually, CHAP doesn't find that this is, that the installation of the windows and the window openings is an issue. It's really just a matter of execution that is an issue. Staff finds that the use of salvaged stained glass and casement windows to be an admirable effort to maintain a historic aesthetic. And section 1.10.3, masonry painting. On its face, the painting of the masonry of both the brick and the stone window sills on the facade does not comply with the design guidelines. However, this is where context matters. The other 4 carriage houses in this row are painted, and it appears that the brick that was used to construct this row of carriage houses is not the highest strength. It's maybe not the highest quality brick. Additionally, there were previous alterations to the building that resulted in the use of visually incompatible brick, as you can see in that top photo. And not just visually, incompatible, it may also be a little materially incompatible too, but that's not what we're here to discuss. There's also the material concern that removing the paint from the brick and these soft sandstone stills at this point would cause more damage to the masonry. So, that decision of how do we do no harm or do less harm? And so given all of these considerations, staff recommends retroactive approval for painting the masonry and recommends that the applicant be allowed to paint the unpainted rear elevation as well. Staff has not received formal comments from the ARC. We did receive a report provided by Ed Hyde that I posted on the Wix site this morning, but understand that the ARC chair is here to testify. So staff analysis is that the completed work does not fully conform to the CHAP guidelines, and staff believes that some aspects will require additional work to bring them into compliance with the CHAP guidelines, such as the broken and failing masonry around the new window openings, the metal wrapping around the new windows and transom windows, and the lengthening of the existing window openings on the rear. However, staff does believe that some aspects of the project can be approved retroactively, such as the installation of the salvaged historic stained glass and casement windows and painting the brick and stone sills. So this is a staff recommendation. Sorry, it's a little long. Retroactive approval of the installation of salvaged historic windows and painting the exterior masonry. The unpainted rear elevation may also be painted, and approval of the following work with conditions. The installation of the 4 new window openings, provided that the metal wrapping is removed, the windows properly fit in the window openings without additional framing, and the damaged and missing bricks are replaced with bricks that match the historic bricks in size and composition. Lengthening 2 windows on the rear elevation, provided that they are further altered to match the length of the adjacent historic window opening and sills are added. And finally, installation of the transom windows on the rear elevation, provided that the transom windows properly fit in the window openings without additional framing and the windows are not wrapped in metal. Thank you, commissioners. Any questions for me?
Sir.
I'm just wondering in terms of implementation, if we recommend that the new windows be properly fit within their opening, are we essentially asking them to replace the actual window unit that's been put in already with a different window unit?
Well, I was thinking about that because they're gonna have to rebuild those window openings anyway because the bricks are so deteriorated. So they can essentially just, build the bricks out,
Well, this is for the new
Yeah.
openings, right?
Right.
For the new openings.
Well, so these-
there's
these-
clearly
these-
masonry
right.
repair work and
Right.
proper masonry work to do around the full perimeter of
Mhm.
these.
Mhm.
And so that they're free to adjust the sizes. But I'm
Mhm.
thinking of the 3 new windows on the rear elevation in particular.
Got it.
Um,
So I don't think so because
Aren't they new, are the ones below that?
so these. Sorry, too many photos. Sorry. Sorry. So those right there. So those are salvaged. The transom windows are. I think that there are a few things. One, it looks like 2 of them are missing a sill. So there's, some opportunity to sort of, do a little bit of infill there. So I think the real issue here is just the sizing of the transom windows and that framing.
And we can talk about the size of the masonry opening to,
Mhm.
to adjust it. Okay, thanks.
I think there are windows there, they just were altered. They're just like too small.
Yeah, so there were 2 smaller windows. They sort of stepped down. So they were lengthened. Yep. Yeah, right there.
There was a staircase.
Yeah.
Probably not, but that's.
Lauren, was this because this is like an alley house, right?
It
So
is.
which one's the front? Was that the front or the back?
No, that was the rear.
That's companion houses now, parking lot.
That's the front.
Yeah, that's the front. That's the front right there. Mhm.
Yeah, alley house is different. Okay. Any other questions for Lauren? Okay, Lauren?
Yes.
There aren't any more questions for you?
Okay.
You,
The alley has a name, doesn't it?
It is. It's Hunter. It's Hunter Street. Yeah.
Oh, the side one.
You can't say it's primary facade if you haven't even named the street. I digress.
Lauren, thank you.
Thank you.
So is the applicant here? By all means, come on up. And give your full name. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's Ayman Abdul Dayam. You said it right.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I want to thank you for that thought-out, non-biased explanation. I think it was great. I really appreciate it. Going into the windows, I think those window sills can be added very easily, and I think painting the back, which was what I was going to do at the end of all this, I think will help the look of that house from the neighborhood. Getting this house, I used to go eat at the Prime Rib with my friends. We would always walk by this house. And as a joke, we'd call it Smoker's Delight because it was just filled with smokers every time we'd walk by. And then later on, when I had the opportunity to purchase this, I learned that it was a lot more than Smoker's Delight. It was drug delight, bathroom delight. It was everything delight. It was very interesting place for such a great neighborhood to see so much go down. I learned all this after I purchased the property, and it took a long time for me to remediate that. So I'm happy where it is now, and I've became friends with a lot of people from the neighborhood and those that living in the neighborhood or just work in the neighborhood. So it's gotten to a good place, but it took a lot of time. My goal, and I don't mean to offend anybody, I didn't know that the historic thing was a thing. I'm very young, so I didn't know that that was an issue. So I've learned that through this process, and now I know that I even emailed Anthony. I want to get a new mailbox slot, so I think I need to get permission for that too. I'm not sure, but my mailbox slot's a little messed up. But now I know, and I want to do everything according to the guidelines that you all have. I really just wanted to make the neighborhood look a little better. I wanted to paint the house so that it could fit the language of the neighborhood a little better. And I just honestly just trying to fit it in because it was an eyesore at some times. So I can answer any questions, everything that you stated as that I would need to do. Totally open to do that and working with the committee and making that work. So nothing rubbed me in any way that I felt was impossible, and I'm ready to take it on. So.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
K-Pow.
When did you purchase the property?